Welcome to the Starlight podcast. Here we discuss the effects of modern culture on our mental, physical, psychological, and spiritual lives through a traditional Kemetic perspective. We hope to provide insight into what we have learned our ancestors did traditionally to live harmoniously with nature. Let the starlight illuminate your mind and shine on the path to help grow the seeds of change. Come join us in the light. Ujahi, Ujahi, Ujahi. Welcome to the fourth episode. This is the fourth episode, right, Shemzheru?
Yeah, this is the fourth episode.
All right, y'all. We made it to the fourth episode of the Starlight podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
So glad to have you all here with us today.
Yeah, facts.
My name is Neferista Merusheta, your co-host, and to my right.
It's me, Shemzheru and
And we want to start out our podcast, open it by giving honor to the Dogon High Priest, Master Healer, and the founder of the Kebtah, the Makaru, the Truth Teller, Neb Nabalamoso Moradenebeg, for without his sacrifice and all that he did to reintroduce Kemetic culture to the modern world, we would not be here with you today. And I want to acknowledge the ancestors of myself and my co-host Shemzheru, because without our ancestors, we would not be here with you today. And I would also like to acknowledge the ancestors of all of our listeners, because without them, you would not be here with us today. So, each and every week, our podcast will feature what is now, you guys might have noted, as the Hot Topics. If you do not know about the Hot Topics, that's because you probably didn't hear our first and second episode. So go check them out. But now, we've changed our hot topic to Chem Talks, a view of the world through a Kemetic lens. And that will be followed up by our main discussion. This week, it'll be I.R.I, which is the initiatives of Kebtah, the initiative.
Indigenous Renaissance
Initiative. Thank you, Shemzheru, because man, I am like tongue-tied today.
It's all good. Sometimes
you are on a podcast that we are like real people. So
yeah, that's transparent.
It is the Indigenous Renaissance Initiative. We're going to be talking about indigenous agriculture today. Then that will be followed up by Pick a Card, Commandment of the Week. And then our Griot's Corner, where we will feature different artists, and we will wrap up with a portion of the Bayouali reading, or what the Greeks called the horoscope. So, in today's Chem Talk, what are we talking about, Shemzheru?
So, today we're going to talk about the hidden environmental cost of food. So, this is an article I found from my multimedia productions class at Morgan State University.
Okay.
That I and my professor and I, we agreed on how interesting this was.
Oh.
Now, question for you.
All right.
Do you or have you ever considered the environmental impact that growing food had?
Do you mean the negative things that growing food or raising livestock does to the earth?
Yes, exactly.
I don't think I have.
Okay. Have you ever thought about the cost of that? I mean, I know you haven't, but have you ever pondered the cost of the damage that may be coming to the earth based upon the stuff that we do?
The financial cost?
Yeah, the financial cost.
I have not.
The financial cost and also the environmental factors as well.
Now, environmental factors, I think about that a lot.
Okay, good.
But when it costs, like money-wise, I never thought about how the bad things that we do are actually costing us money too.
Okay, so with that, then how much are you willing to pay to counterbalance the destruction of the environment through the food that we buy in stores?
So you know that I ain't even trying to pay more than maybe $10 for a pound of chicken, let alone like a whole rack of money because somebody messed up some stuff. What do you mean?
Yeah, so okay, I feel you on that. No worries, I feel you on that. So because of that, what they're doing now in this article is showing that there is an environmental cost towards food, and most people, when they go in the store, they buy a pound of food that costs about $6 or $7, but That's excluding the environmental factors, which is $31 per pound. So this is what the article is highlighting. And there's a legislation, I always butcher that word, that may be incorporating creative ways for charging us. And it's very interesting, especially if you consider the fact that there's about how many billion of Americans in America? Let's just consider America. There's about 4 billion people in America. I think about 4 to 6 billion, right? So if you consider 4 to 6 billion of those people, most people are going to grocery stores and shopping and buying food, whether they be vegan, meat eaters, et cetera, et cetera. And because of that, the food that we're purchasing on shelves is not considering the environmental damage. And if they were to consider the environmental damage, because America is a business, well, they say, well, instead of us paying gobs of money to offset the environmental factors that it costs when growing food, we're going to now push that to the American dollars. So there was this site that I found that expressed the concept of making the true price of the foods more so transparent. And that site that I found was actually www.truepricefoundation.org. Okay. And it's a global movement of government, businesses, and consumers that are taking action incorporating environmental and social costs and prices. They envision a world where all products are sold for a true price to enable a sustainable global economy. And the article is very interesting and worth a read on the New York Times, right? That's where it can be found if y'all want to look at it. It's so fascinating to me because here we have a point where the modern system is monitoring the land and the damage that certain conditions hold. Now, this company, among others, is proposing a monitoring system that allows that transparency to be able to be seen so that we can get an understanding. Well, you know, although you have a household of 6 kids or 4 kids or however the median amount of kids is, and I know that you want to buy food for them and all of them to sustain your family, you might want to reconsider because now there's an environmental factor that's perpetuating and it makes you want to just possibly reconsider. Because even like the fact of the government is taking the responsibility of us feeding ourselves from that and more so monopolizing it to themselves. Right. Meaning the industry of food growing in America is now funneled by farmers and funneled by them. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with farmers, but if you look at facilities such as Monsanto, and we're going to get into that later, then if they're controlling the crop, and if now there's industries controlling like the food that we purchase, like the cattle and stuff like that, then that just takes the responsibility out of our hands. It's a nefarious system. So because of this monitoring system, there has to be a balance between the destructive and constructive forces in all things that we do and see, regardless of where it is. Okay. And this is it has to be a balance somewhere. Right. And so in the indigenous schools that we are part of, the MTOM schools of Kemetic philosophy and spirituality, we learned early on about that concept when we call it Herusef. Herusef essentially is the balance between two opposing forces, the forces of construction and the forces of destruction. So the traditional relationship is expressed in consideration of the land, meaning if you now understand that the earth itself has been sustaining you, it's the place where you're born from, everything that you know comes from the earth, all of your clothes, all of your food, etc., 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 you have to consider the earth and the impact that you're leaving into the earth, right? So in the Philosophy Podium, which is a book written by our founder, Master Neb Nabila Musa Moradinabig, the founder of the Kebtah schools, he talks about the Gormanche people and how before any action that they perform, they would always read the earth's energy through the science of MTOM to see how they can fit into nature and see the impact, right? So even if it would be before digging a well into the earth, they would read because they're always striving to fit inside of that harmonic balance with the earth. So later in that story or later in the essay, he later says, it's like a person eating a can of beans and calling constipation to the whole city. We don't see how we're connected because this society that we live in is a society of distraction where your individual house, your individual car, your individual room, your individual
Right.
bed, et cetera, et cetera. Everything makes it an individualized system, right? So you don't really see how you're connected to everything and how that your action affects her action, which affects his action, which affects their action, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera. So because of that disconnect, we don't see how all of these things are relating. And every indigenous culture has the mindset of preserving the thing that is sustaining everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, such as like being born in the West,
Right.
then things like this would occur.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you have like industries that are trying to show you have an environmental impact. You have an impact in the environment in general.
Mm-hmm.
But now, because food is so precious and near and dear to us, maybe we'll start paying attention to it more because it's pertaining to the thing that we like, meaning food. So
Right.
do you have just listening to all that, do you have anything?
I remember learning from my grandparents who grew a lot of our food every year, the balance of timing, the time to grow the food, the importance of canning and naturally preserving the food in the winter, and understanding the importance of having some control as an individual over the things you eat. But the one thing that I really thought about what you were saying is, how can we leave something so important, like growing our food, in someone else's hand? Because here we're understanding that there's an environmental impact for what you're saying, but it sounds like a lot of it is coming from the fact that our modern culture doesn't know how to do things in a harmonious way. It's causing destruction. And then instead of fixing that so that we can do things right and be preservers, they're saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to mess things up. But since you need your food, we're going to then now make you pay for the mess up too. Instead of changing the way we do things. And because clearly, if humans have been on this earth forever, for a long time, I wanted to say forever, but forever, forever, ever, forever, ever, for a long, long time, long before this modern system, then they had to be doing something right, because it wasn't until the last 50, 60 years ago that, within the last 50, 60 years, that we've seen that most of our waterways are polluted. It wasn't until the last 50, 60 years that we've seen that the air is polluted. So it's the things that we keep doing for our conveniences that we see are destructive to us. And instead of us really thinking about how are we manufacturing our food, or what are our food practices, our food production, and instead of correcting the things that we do, we use that money. Well, we use the negative way of doing things as a tool for making money, and then change the consumer, and we charge the consumer more money to offset this destruction, but not actually changing our own actions. So destruction just begets more destruction. And I think it's time to consider, what did our ancestors do? Because everything that we see in this article, which was a great article, Shemzheru.
Thanks.
Just shows that here we're doing something wrong, and in us doing it wrong, instead of fixing it, we're going to charge you for it so we can still make more money and just continue the cycle of destruction. Things keep getting worse. Nothing gets better. So maybe it's time for us to say, maybe the Guamanche, maybe the traditional culture, maybe we need to consider a different way and look back to our ancestors and how they did things.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Shemzheru, for that awesome Chem Talk. And our wonderful listeners, that concludes Chem Talk for today.
Yes, it does.
Today's topic. We continue to explore the Indigenous Renaissance Initiative, or I.R.I, and our initiative execute the vision of Indigenous leaders and uplift communities while honoring the cultural principles. They are designed to address the needs of Indigenous communities all around the world, but especially there in Africa, facing challenges due to colonial influences and modernity encroaching. Modernity. I have to say that word again because legislation for you, modernity for me.
Bro, it'd be like that.
Okay. Encroaching on their ways of life and survival. So basically just making sure that people who are already living a traditional life, living the old ways that serve them best, that keep them harmonious with nature and preservers of life, that they can still live there that way. That colonizers don't come in, and colonialism doesn't come in and tell them they can't live their life that way anymore. So, Shemzheru, which initiatives are we getting into today?
So today I'm going to start off with the indigenous agriculture.
Okay.
And farming is essential to the well-being and Today I'm going to start off with indigenous agriculture. Farming is essential to the well-being and sustenance of indigenous villages. Mm-hmm. Cultures like the Dogon revere nature and the natural seeds and grains as sacred and central to their way of life, and have mastered agricultural practices that heal and preserve the integrity of their lands and communities. The Seeds of Indigenous Life, or SIL, program utilizes this ancient know-how to protect the biodiversity and sustainability of the land and Dogon communities, while reversing the destructive effects of modern farming practices. So I read this article, right? You know, it seems like I always find articles. Right. And I read this article about Monsanto and a local farmer in the Midwestern Vernon area, Bowman, for reusing the seeds of genetically engineered soybeans. Monsanto and two other companies monopolized the seed industry. And so any local farmers or any small time farmers have to now buy their seeds from them.
Okay, so if you have a seed, you grow a crop, and then you're getting ready to plant for the next season, you have to go to Monsanto to buy the seed if you got them the first time?
So essentially you cannot reuse your seeds.
What? Wait.
And what they did is super, super nefarious. It's dark, it's evil, but it logically makes sense.
Okay.
And it's terrible to say that, like, after really looking at the article, I had to think about it. But if you control the seed industry, you're gonna make it so the farmer or whoever it is that's buying your seed always has to, right? Because what they used to do back in the day is a seed begat a seed.
That's right.
If you grow
absolutely.
look at a watermelon, right? Mm-hmm. You put a seed in the ground, eventually it grows, right?
Yeah,
eventually it grows into a fruit.
Yeah.
That fruit also produced seeds inside of it. So now you have more seeds in the future. Mm-hmm. So Monsanto was like, yeah, no. Oh. So every time you reuse the seeds, you're gonna have to pay us a certain percentage, because the seed begets the seed. We can't control that, but we can control the patent that binds you to a specific contract and makes you have to give us a certain percentage or pay us for reusing that seed.
Because Monsanto is the genetically modified seed,
right?
Correct. Okay.
Monsanto, what it is the genetically modified soybean, but it's not. They just have more. They have more than just soybeans. It's the seed industry in general. Like, when it comes to growing food. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
right. So it shows how important the I.R.I agricultural project is when it comes to preserving natural methods of indigenous cultivation of the land, preserving natural seeds, and reversing destructive effects of modern farming practices. Now, I'm going to say that again, because if you really, I'm not going to, directly say, hint, hint, da-da-da-da-da, but reversing the destructive effects of modern farming practices. In a sense, I'm gonna let y'all make that inference that y'all got going on, because I ain't going to direct.
I'm going to help a little bit, because I know you were letting them, Yeah,
I got you.
But here's the reality. Basically, it's saying something as natural as, like you said, you grow something, it has a seed, and so you take the seed, you plant the seed, it begets another plant, and you have a cycle so that you can feed yourself.
Right.
Now, a company is saying, okay, we're going to genetically modify it so now it no longer happens in nature. We're going to patent it because we're the ones who did this, and then we're going to say that you can't use it without buying it from us.
Well, essentially, yes. I mean, they still understand the process because even with something that's genetically engineered or genetically altered, it's still following a map or a blueprint of something that was created by a source that of higher intelligence,
Right.
you know, the Netru.
Mhm.
If we see it that, you know, that's how we see it. That's the reality of the situation.
Right.
So the soybean itself, because it's a part of life, it can copy the modality of life and beget life. But because it came from them and it's genetically engineered,
Right.
that genetical engineering
It's the patent part.
is the aspect of the patent. And the crop itself, you know, this is why seeds, you know, sidebar, I just got really excited.
Okay.
But if you have seeds,
Right.
if you have seeds that somehow your grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, to your grandfather, to you somehow passed down,
Right.
be careful.
Ooh.
That's all I'm saying. Like, personally, don't tell nobody, because even, you know, and I don't know the extent of how the industry is for the seeds, but if the three biggest companies like Monsanto and I forgot the names of the other two, if they monopolize that, they can come after you, regardless of your seed being not from them or not.
Because they don't want you to have the ability to grow your own things without their hand being in it.
And what the importance, like reading the case and looking at the what is it, Bauman versus Monsanto versus U.S. farming, shit get a little sketchy after a while. Because now you're taking on, like, if the small time farmers want to stand against Monsanto, Monsanto has the United States backing them only because it's the patent that they're facing.
Right.
And then, which makes this even more dark, is the farming practices globally are also affected by this practice. Because if Bauman won that, then it would look like this the farmers, the local farmers, the small farmers can kind of do what they want,
which is originally how it was, right?
Originally, but it's not like that anymore. It's not like that anymore. So now, because Monsanto won, you cannot, you have to, you have to pay a certain percentage. And this is a global thing. It's not just a local thing. You know what made this case so big? It was like Brown versus the Board of Education. It was like one. It was like that.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was tackling the farming industry, and if the farmers use seeds,
right,
then it's attacking both of those industries together. Now Monsanto monopolizing that,
right?
It
wow.
And like I said, you know, like going back to the I.R.I agricultural project that the Kebtah schools are doing in that mission, it makes it even. We're standing up against that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Essentially, and you know, I didn't want to be the one to say that. You know, I wanted to make them make their inferences, but we're standing up against that.
We're saying that
because
people.
Sorry to cut you off, but because this practice is a global thing, right? It's not like, although you can see it as isolated inside of the Manu or America, it's not,
right?
Because everybody gets food from a farmer,
right?
You know, it's like a farmer. This is how it used to be, a farmer, right?
Exactly.
But if you monopolize that industry, you take it away from the farmer,
right?
And you now move it outside of the scope of that. And anybody who comes in and says, well, you have cattle, you have this, you have that, I'm going to make it so you have to come through us to get it. Oh, should have been a little dark. So, you know, there's this quote that, I'm not going to tell y'all the origins of this quote, but if we don't stand up for what is true, then we will fall from what is the lie. And that's all I got.
And we see that happening in every facet of modern life today.
Yep. Yeah, what's our next segment?
Pick a card. Commandments of the week.
Let's get it.
So some of you may know of the 42 laws of Ma'at, and some of you are familiar with the 10 commandments. All of these are coming from something much, much larger, a much larger body of knowledge. The Great Book of Divine Ordinances, the Code of Human Behavior, or what many of you may know as the 77 Commandments. These laws were given to humanity from the Word of the God. They are not created by humans or governments, and they have no political agendas. They are the rules that allow us to harmoniously live together on this earth and in balance with nature while evolving towards the divine world. So that's some context so you guys know what the background of our pick a card commandment of the week.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off. I don't want to get too far off, but I think we should have an episode just talking about that.
Just the commandments, or just talking about
what you just said. Every time you say it, some of you may know the 42 laws of Ma'at. You know, that's all I remember from what you said. But bro, that's big.
It's heavy. It's
like,
heavy. It's
what?
big.
Come on, man.
We should do that.
That'd be cool.
Hey, you know what, listeners? If any of you are interested in having just an episode that is kind of focused on the Great Book of Divine Ordinances, the 77 Divine Ordinances, the Code of Human Behavior, let us know. Drop us an email at www.thestarlightpodcast@theearthcenter.org. Let us know at www.thestarlightpodcast@theearthcenter.org if you'd like to hear more about the 77 Divine. So, Shemzheru,
Yes, ma'am.
we're coming back from the sidebar.
All right.
What is our commandment of the week? Go ahead.
I have a tendency of every time she asks me something I just get excited about. I like chuckle. That's honestly why I be chuckling, like, because I be excited to talk about stuff, and I shouldn't be saying I be because I'm a substitute teacher. And I be like, I be that's the wrong English, but I am usually excited. So the commandment that we're tackling today is thou shalt not steal farmland.
I don't, from all that we've been talking about, and this is a very appropriate one.
Thou shalt not steal farmland.
Thou shalt not steal farmland. Bro. Like, just thinking about the depths of what that means. Just thinking about just in the United States, historically, how many black farmers had farms taken from them. And a lot of us think that that's something that happened many, many, many hundreds of years ago, but that's still even happening now.
Tell us how.
And then we even see with what we talked about with our Kebtah. Like, isn't that in essence even part of a concept of stealing a farmland? If you can't even grow the seeds from the things that you produce, and now I'm just saying, I'm the one who has it all. You ain't got none.
And for this commandment specifically, it makes me sequentially have to look farther. We can look at like farmers and farmlands, right?
Right.
But now let's look at the housing industry, because the housing industry has to deal with real estate and land, right? So now if you had big acres of land that were utilized for something for time immemorial, and now you have industries that are coming to quote unquote destroy that land, who's to say you're not stealing farmlands from something?
Right.
If you look at the history of America, and the commandment is not specifically just saying America, but it's a big commandment, so I just want to tackle it the right way that I can. If you look at the history of America, the stealing of land and turning it into something has been a constant narrative that's been perpetuating and happening. Like a farmland could be like, if you have a house and you have a family, it could be you and your wife out there just tending to the garden, or just, it doesn't even have to be something as big as the industrialized farms that we have nowadays. It could be something as small as you and your family out there in a cottage tending to the farmland.
Would I dare say, would that even encompass when another quote unquote country government comes into someone's land and then tells them they can't live their life the way they live it.
Absolutely.
They can't grow how they grow traditionally how they grow their food.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do it their way, or even come and, like you said, take the land and then use it for their own way.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like you said, just kick the person who was on the land and how they did things on the land off.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like...
and that's
like,
globally happening.
Let's... A lot of people want to go to the Native Americans, so let's go to the Native Americans, right?
Okay.
The Native Americans had practices that looked at the energetic composition and the physical composition and seeing how they related to.
Right.
Right? So now if you have people that are looking at the energies and taking care of the energies,
Mm-hmm.
not just the crops, you know, like let's say the Mayflower came and Christopher Columbus, and then Thanksgiving was born somehow because after the genocide and something, and then you know, like look at that, you know, that was a terrible rendition of history, but it is what it is. We here, right? So the Native Americans, a lot of them were also considering the immaterial. You know, we started this podcast off by talking about we want to give acknowledgement towards the immaterial.
Right.
You know, even as farmers or people that are striving to see yourself in space and time. We even talked about it with the Gormanche.
Yeah.
Before they dig any type of holes, they read the Earth's energy to see if they are, you know, see how can they fit regardless of whatever the action that they're doing, right? So farmlands is a big concept.
Right.
Now we look at it in the small, minute concept of where we are, but if we get stuck on side of that, we won't see how big that specific commandment is. We have to look at anything because life itself begets life, right? So now if you have a seed or if you have anything that can sustain life and you put it in the ground, you can kind of consider that farmland. Now you have divinities and things like that in this specific plot of land, and now you're taking care of that. And those are now producing some type of, you know, crop or not even crop. You know, it could be like as simple as like a peach tree growing.
True.
You know, and you're benefiting from this tree, and your grandfather.
All of nature is too.
Exactly. And now your grandfather's telling you, well, this tree somehow sprouted up from the ground and we just kept taking care of it and getting the peaches when we was kids. It could be something like that. You know, and that's been perpetuated in the family, your great grandfather, your great great grandfather, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now you are now tending to that. But let's say that the system of modernity now wants to put a highway in between where your house is and take your land, right? So it's a trickle effect. Yeah. But yeah, I don't want to go into
No,
too
that
far,
was good,
yeah.
Shemzheru. That was really good. Okay, y'all. That was our commandment of the week. Thou shalt not steal farmlands. Feel free to replay this and consider that in the greater scope of our lives. So, after all that goodness, we want to take a moment and give a shout out and have a word from our sponsor.
Ujai, this is your producer Vic Geb here with today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Ancasta Natural Healing. Ancasta Natural Healing provides us with rare African herbs from West Africa to help with a multitude of conditions, from everyday health to detoxes, brain cleansers, liver, kidney cleansers. The list for cleansers goes on. Immunity builders, herbs for the heart, the lungs, nerve health, stomach and digestion, energy and mood, sexual health, reproductive health, men and women's health. The list goes on and on. You'll have to check it out at their website. That's www.anhlife.org. So why Ancasta Natural Healing? Well, they're indigenous made, meaning that all of their products are made by West African indigenous healers, carrying generations of healing traditions from the ancient Kemetic Nile Valley. They provide us with rare African herbs. All of their herbal products are sourced from rare plants found in West Africa. All of their holistic healing products are geared to address the modern problems facing humanity, as well as they give back. They are a BIPOC operated nonprofit. They work with African indigenous healers and communities, and all of the purchases support their mission for preservation of sacred lands and healing culture. So again, you can visit their website and shop online at www.anhlife.org. That's www.anhlife.org. And you can check them out on Instagram at ANH_life. That's on Instagram at ANH_life. And you can give them a call for any questions you may have at 737-201-1213. And that's today's sponsor. And now we're going to get back into the episode. Due out.
Thank you to our producer, Big Gab, and our sponsor today, Ancasta Natural Healing. So we're going to move forward to our next segment. And, it's really one of my favorite segments, and it's the Griot's Corner. Again, the Griot's Corner is a time that we get to explore and listen to the artistry of many, many different artists. We're hoping that we get to hear from our community and all of our listeners sending in, different work that they do. But today, we're going to have a special Griot's Corner, something new. I know you guys have normally heard from Shemzheru, his amazing poetry. But today, we're going to hear from Big Gab Nejebu, and he's going to give you something new. So take it away, Big Gab.
Thank you. Ujai, once again, this is Big Gab. Not here as your producer, but here as a musician here on the Griot's Corner. I'm honored. Today, I'll be sharing a piece that I wrote in, I want to say about 2019, entitled Redbone. Just a little bit of background. I am a marching percussionist as well as an instructor at Randallstown High School. I've been instructing there since 2018, and I actually started writing my own music that year. I've been playing the drums since the 6th grade, middle school marching band that year. Was able to play with the high school band and starting in 7th grade. And band is what got me to college, or made me want to go to college. I went to Norfolk State University in Virginia and played with the legendary drumline, the $1 Million Funk Squad. So a lot of their influence is within me. So check out this cadence that I wrote called Redbone and let me know what you think. Thanks. Back, y'all. Before we get back into the episode, I just want to say thank y'all for checking me out. And if you want some more, you can follow me on Instagram at _Hidden Drum Village. That's _Hidden Drum Village. I'll be honest, I don't be on Instagram too much. But if y'all liking the content and y'all want some more, give me that motivation to get on there. All right, I'll check y'all out later. Peace.
Yo, that was so dope.
It was.
That was so amazing.
I'm laughing because I'm always excited whenever he plays.
If you guys get a chance, and we're gonna let him talk more about it. But Big Gab has been doing this for a long time.
Yeah,
he is not new to this. He's true to this.
Yeah, he's true to that. Yeah, for sure.
And
he inspired me, low key.
Listen, he inspires me too in so many different ways. I'm like, if I don't drum, I need to pick up some sort of instrument
and throw it and at
play
somebody. Wow. Music.
Okay, that's not the type of music we're going to make.
Yeah. Okay.
But
sorry.
we're gonna get at it, y'all. We're gonna go back into our topic segment. So, Shemzheru,
Yes, ma'am.
you were talking a bit about that actual court case between Bowman versus Monsanto.
Mm-hmm.
What actually ended up happening in that all? I know you said they lost, but can you give us more detail?
Yeah, so in 2013, the case of Bowman versus Monsanto, the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously that farmers cannot reproduce patent seeds without the patent holder's permission.
So basically what you were saying is true, that they're basically saying that because they genetically altered the seed, now if he decides to use that seed without buying it again, he can get sued.
Yep. Anybody.
Yep.
Anybody.
So, okay. Not that I try in any way to use modified genetic seeds, but if I do somehow, and I guess watermelon, we'll go back to watermelon because I love me some watermelon. I grow the watermelon. It has seed because, I'm getting the seeded one versus the seedless because that's crazy. I take that seed, save it for next season. I plant it again. I'm doing something illegal? Okay, y'all can't see Shemzheru's face. And the shrug he gave me,
but I mean, okay,
listen, like we had a James Bond moment. Like he's like, "Listen, I'm not gonna say it because they, but you just said it, and wow."
She always try to get me as like a target.
That's not true.
Look, I'm be walking in my car, and all of a sudden, I'm gonna see a little red dot in the morning. I'll be like, "Ooh, damn, hey, what?" And I'm gonna follow it, because I'm follow. I'm be like, "Oh shit, where that's going?" Oh wait, why is it going up my leg?
See, no.
Wait. It's on my torso. Oh, gee.
Okay, you know what, y'all? Although we joke about this to a certain degree.
I mean, like, we really got to consider where we are.
Yes, and where we're going.
And although I shrugged and I don't really want to say certain things, is because we got to consider. We got to consider that. And it's not just the monopolization of the seed industry, right? Even if you look at like the FCC and what you can say over airways. Now, it's not as bad as certain countries. North Korea. Sorry, I was just clearing my throat out. It's not as bad as certain places.
Well, I mean, in a sense, at the same time, and I know this goes back to our last week's episode. And listen again, if you guys didn't listen to the last episodes, go ahead and do it. But a gatekeeper. Because what's trippy about it is certain things will be illegal, but then there's so much mess that is bad for us that is legal. Yeah,
I mean, like a lot of people's perception of when it comes to America is it's a petri dish, and they try things here that they can't do in other places. Like,
that's true.
Even when it comes to, I was reading this article on the importance of opening an offshore banking account. And they were talking about how when it comes to the American economic system and sustainability, this is one of the worst like in the world. And because it's so faulty, right? Because it's so unstable, it's really a better idea to have your money outside of this place as opposed to inside of this place. It's a petri dish because of, even when it comes to certain chemical products inside of foods, they can put it in the food, change the name. And in other countries, you can't have the name, you can't have the cousin of that, you can't have the stepsister. If it's anything in relation to this specific chemical, you can't have it in the foods. It's not a, oh no, you can change it. In America, you can change it. You can change it. You can change it. And they do that with many things. Like, like we can spend a little bit, like other podcasts, really talking about some of the stuff. But even there's this book that I was listening to because I'm a heavy podcast listener, a heavy Audible book listener. And it's called A Medical Apartheid. That book, bro, that like when about 90% of the way when we were in SUNT in class, I started to listen to that book, and it showed you how the medical malpractice is such a common thing. Like they experimented with, I forgot what it was. It wasn't a Tuskegee syphilis experiment. It wasn't that. It was something more nefarious. Maybe next week when I have it more fresher in my brain. But it was like this type of poisonous liquid that they put inside of the veins of like poor and black people to test it. It was kind of along the lines of like how they did with the Tuskegee experiment.
You can look it up.
But it was something else. It was something else. And I forgot the name of it. But they do shit like that because it's like, well, for medical science, we can get away with it, right? Even what they do when it comes to certain practices in those hospitals, right? You sign the waiver going in. You sign the terms and conditions.
Most people don't read.
You don't read it because look, I understand, right? It's like 15 pages of legal talk and jargon. I don't know what the hell they saying. I done read 6 pages. I read 6 pages and I have no idea what's going on. So now if you have a document considering, you have to sign this before you even get seen, that's not even the waiting aspect of it. That's the first 2 hours that you're in there, but now you sitting there for a whole another 6 hours waiting for the doctor to come, right?
They're waiting to put you in a desperate position.
You sitting there for a minute. And at the moment that you are inside of that desperate position, you don't care what you gotta sign.
Right.
I gotta do what to get what? Oh, I want to get seen. I'm hurt. This pain, it feels bad. I don't want it no more. We have been so accustomed to the comfort concept, right? That we're losing our humility, we're losing our humanity and giving it over inside of the documents.
Right.
I spent my time. There was this video game that I was about to get on the App Store, right? On Apple product, and it gave you this terms of conditions. So I'm sitting there reading it. I ain't had shit else to do. I'm Lyft driving. I'm reading this bad boy. I'm like, what? Do what to my data?
Right.
And I'm like, yo, and I'm screenshotting it because it's crazy. But that's so common, bro. Yo, it's so common. It's so common. You will literally sign your life over and then be trying to fight them for coming to your door and dragging you the hell out of your house. How? And they pull up the legality aspect of it. Like, so when it comes to it, right, the stuff that the government allows for us to even be involved with, if it benefits the deeper pockets or the deeper nature or the deeper experience that they got going on, yo, I don't give a fuck about you, bro. Excuse my language, but come on, man. And you just gotta look at what you at. You gotta look at the situation and the position that you find yourself in. So this right here, this case was a big case. And I'm gonna say the name again in case you all might wanna do some investigative research and continue reading about it. But it's the Bauman versus Monsanto. And there's even an article, it's called U.S. Farmers versus the United States. It was like farmers versus the United States. And it was really giving you a deeper, in-depth look about what was happening and your position. So the crazy thing is, right, Monsanto is known for their herbicides and pesticides, but now they hold the monopoly of the seed industry, patenting and genetically engineering the seeds, which is telling you that they control what you consume, whether it be real or not real. They clearly say it's genetically altered or genetically engineered, right? That's clearly begetting the fact that it's not real. And this is the shadow that looms over us, the thing that blankets and smothers the fresh air of our hopes. Of our hopes. It's the fact that when you go to the grocery store, you don't know what's real and not. You think whatever you got because, and this is crazy. I hate to bring my grandfather into this, but it's so sad, the older generation, because they had such a trust in the government. Right. I'm not saying that he was alive. He was doing a lot. He was alive during the Kennedy. When Kennedy was running for president, he was alive. Of course. And at that time, you can see it like a nefarious reverse. Like when Kennedy got assassinated, shit started to really get kind of dark. It always had that looming cloud, But then it started to become like blatant. And then everything that followed thereafter, yo, the thing about elders, they will trust whatever the government, the medical, the religious, the educational, whatever those industries say, they trust them to the T, man. They don't even like, yo, I was having a conversation with my grandfather, like checking behind, like talking about checking behind, you know, this. We was talking about food, and it was a really good conversation, and he ain't never considered half the things that I was saying. And it seemed like it was foreign. You know, you got that crowd. You doing whatever you need to do. And situations like Monsanto, and they just one of them. You know, the United States Agricultural Department, the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. Damn, that's the same thing. The FDA, Food and Drug Administration. And we got so many acronyms, you don't even know what you're going on.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not just the food industry. It's the tech industry. It's the educational field. Universities, academia, modern academia. It's a lot more nefarious than it just being the food and the drug. It's because it's all about money, yo. America's a business. It's all about money. I hate to go on a rant, you know. I'm gonna cut this right now, but realistically, what they was fighting was the patent laws and regulations of the United States. And that, you already know that's money. So now you messing up the business of America.
Right. And
come on, bro.
And crazy. Thinking about just how that's what's happening here. We're already a part of that system. We don't have, I won't say we don't have, the traditions that my grandparents upheld of being able to plant, like a lot of the things that I grew up with was really that. Most of the neighbors had a big, huge garden. Those gardens sustained us through the wintertime. Most of us went to a butcher, and you know the livestock was killed in front of your face. You knew the farm where the livestock was being raised, and there was natural things. Like I remember learning in school about how fish, like when you went fishing for your food, you took those parts of the fish and you used that as part of what you used as fertilizer for the ground. And my grandfather used to take fish and eggshells and use that like it was almost like a mulch in itself, and put that in the fertilizer into the ground, because the nitrogen in it would help the ground and become more fertile, so he could grow the crops that we needed. And that's knowledge that is old wisdom.
Yeah, they call it. I mean, you know, that's what they say. The compost now.
Compost now.
But you know, like.
That's nothing new.
Who's to say it's nothing new for one?
And so then you have indigenous cultures,
bro. That's what
who
makes
are
them so powerful, bro.
Still practicing. They still know. Unlike us, who have it's hard to hear, but the reality of it is we're slaves.
Joe, say that again. Say that one more time.
It's hard to hear, but the reality is we're slaves.
Come on, Kunta. What's your name? Say it, Toby. Say Toby.
And when you realize, you know, that we rather have someone take care of us in every way, that these conveniences of somebody else providing food for you is something you rather have, and thus now they control you inexplicitly.
Yo.
Because really, if you value your life and who you are, then the things that you need to live, to be alive, to sustain your life, you would think that would be important for you to know how to do yourself.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to go like this. These types of conversations are really good to have because it flushes out a lot of different things. And I'm trying to stay, you know, like here, but like look at the hygiene, right? The hygienic aspect of it. You got people cooking for you. You don't know how their hygiene is.
Well, you know what? And that goes back to what you were saying, how we sang at the top. You don't know their hygiene, and you don't know energetically how they are.
Bro.
Again, going back to my grandmother.
We about to talk about something. My grandmother
whenever she cooked for us, you know how you hear the saying she cooks with love. It's how a person's energy is. You know, it was important to my grandmother to have peace in her house, and she cooked. Whenever she cooked, she was never angry. And understanding that even portion, understanding that there's a certain way to do everything, and indigenous cultures know how to do things because they have the technical knowledge.
Who that remind you of? Who that remind you of?
I don't know.
Grandmama.
Look, listen, y'all. This is a sidebar moment. Just for a second.
You got a sidebar. We got. This is a sidebar.
But it ties into the importance.
It is. It's all about everything.
Of being able, of what I.R.I does through agriculture, of making sure that indigenous people can maintain their agricultural ways, their farming traditions, as well as reversing the damage and destruction of colonialism and modernity encroaching on their ways of life. So when Shemzheru and I went to Merita,
you're going back to the pilgrimage episode.
Going back to the pilgrimage, but this is important. It ties in. We stayed with our teachers, our current Zeshmi, the executive director of the Earth Center or the Kebtah, Naba Irita Shamira. He is the son of Neb Naba Lamoso Moro Denabig, and he's continued to carry the torch that his father has left him to spread this Kemetic culture, upholding it with both hands throughout the world. So I.R.I is part of that, of course. So when we went, we got to stay in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
Bobo Dioulasso.
Oh yeah, Bobo Dioulasso. Bobo Dioulasso. And there we got to meet his grandma.
His mother.
Yeah, thank you. But we called her grandmama.
We called her grandmama. So.
And every morning, Shemzheru and I would walk about a quarter of a mile. You would say, Shemzheru?
I don't know, man. When you in Africa, bro, you just kind of like, ooh, I'm in here, ooh.
Yeah, you just happy to be walking. I don't know how far it was.
I don't know how far that walk was, bro.
We'd get up early in the morning. It was a beautiful walk. We'd get up early in the morning before the sun rose, and we'd walk over to Grandma's house. And the first thing she would ask us is, how did we sleep? And we'd tell her. And then she'd ask us, how we were feeling. And if, I remember one time, I think both of us had stomach pains. And she told one of the children in French to go get something. And here we were drinking something. And within an hour or so later, we were feeling better. I remember talking to Naba Irita just in regards to asking him questions because she cooked. And it must have been 30 of us there, maybe less. But she knew how every single one of us were feeling. She knew what ailments every single one of us had. And then when she cooked, the things that she put into the food, the herbs, the spices, the food she chooses, the plants, the greens, everything that she put into the food addressed the health issues that each and every one of us had. The food was the healing. So understanding that this is this technical knowledge that these indigenous people have maintained, because everything that we need, the earth provides. Everything. Modern science has started to make you think, no, you need a doctor, you need a scientist to tell you how to do things. But the reality is they're the baby of the bunch. When has it ever made sense for the elder to follow the child? So all that she did, I'm telling you guys, and again, that's another episode. If you didn't listen to the pilgrimage episode, go back and listen to it. To know that just living in a natural environment where things were natural, the food was natural, how it was grown was natural, that they understood the technology to we'll say interrogate or ask questions of the earth to find out when was the right way or the best way to do things. That's talking about unseen properties, unseen things. And we know that our modern culture just does not, there's just barely scratching the surface of that lately. But we know that that's not a thing, and we can see the destruction. When you don't know, it will hurt you. The bad thing about it is because you don't know how it's hurting you, when the pain comes, you're oblivious to why you're hurting. You know, all sorts of things can be happening in your life and you're oblivious to why you're hurting. And so you never can get to the root of the problem. It keeps you successfully distracted. So we're seeing, just in how we're touching base on this, how important the I.R.I, the Indigenous Renaissance Initiative is, and in touching base on the agriculture initiative, how important it is to maintain the traditions of these indigenous people, because although we don't know, we can still learn from them. The West needs what Africa has. The West needs modern culture. Let's get away from the West. All of modern culture needs what traditional culture provides, because it's the foundation of everything that they've corrupted. It's the foundation of what's real and what can keep us all living harmoniously in nature. So, Shemzheru, you got anything to add to that before we wrap this segment up?
Nah, I don't have anything to add. Everything was left on the table.
I know that's right. So, the next portion, y'all, is our Birth by I.R.I Earth Energy reading. And we know we generally give you some inside information in regards to each person's specific by I.R.I reading for that month. So to give those of you who may not know, the science of reading the Earth's energy is over 70,000 years old, and it's originating in the temples of Thebes and Memphis and Abydos, and known by modern science as geomancy. So parts of the science can still be found all over the world, but the original form of the reading is known as M-Tom, and it's still being practiced by the Garmanchi people of West Africa. So instead of like giving you an actual reading, and to give some context, I know some of you might have not heard before, but this would be what the Greeks called the horoscope. This is actually the Garmanchi people, those who studied and knew M-Tom, who understood geomancy, understood that, like we've been saying throughout this whole entire episode, we live on the earth. The earth is what gives us everything. And the energy of the earth is what feeds us. So you don't look out to stars that are far away from you to find out about your life. You look within. You look on the earth that you're on. So today, instead of you giving you like a quote unquote by I.R.I horoscope reading, giving you information from the by I.R.I, we're going to just give you some background information, some foundational information, so that you know more about the by I.R.I. And shout out to the Rising Firefly. If you guys haven't checked it out, check out the Rising Firefly. I'm going to actually read a bit from the Rising Firefly, the Sunnyside newspaper blog. And this is from an article called Touch the Earth by Baashu Tutsanai. Go ahead, say it for me again.
Tutsanai.
Oh, yeah, y'all, because sometimes I'm tired, y'all, today, but that's another story for another time.
Honestly, it's probably a little easier if you look at the Medu.
Yes, it probably is. So, humanity, as I said, is from the earth. The earth is what we are made of. We depend on the earth for everything, for life itself. And we depend on the earth for the air, the water, the food, clothing, shelter, energy, without which we would die. If humanity cut itself off from the earth, how could we live? How could we survive? In order to survive, humanity must maintain a harmony with the earth. We must return to the earth. We can learn the process and the value of staying in harmony with the earth through the knowledge and teachings of our ancestors in Kemet. So Kemet is the traditional and original name for the culture, historical, governmental, spiritual capital of the traditional world, which many call ancient Egypt. The land we now call Egypt, as defined by the colonial powers, was just part of the Kemetic realm. The Kemetic culture has been preserved by communities all over the world for thousands of years, and Kemetic culture has been passed down from mouth to ear for hundreds of generations and is available to us today. So when we look at it, we really no longer are connected to the earth. We no longer hear the earth. The noise pollution has made the natural words of the earth inaudible. We no longer hear the buzzing of the bees gathering nectar in the backyard. We no longer hear the sounds of crickets at night. Oh my goodness, that's such a beautiful sound. We no longer hear the movement of rivers, streams, or lakes or oceans nearby. The thunder we hear is more often just a plane going by. And, excuse me, y'all. Instead of really hearing the natural thunder of the earth, we don't hear those things. What we know is that our Kemetic ancestors taught us that the earth's energy that maintains our existence, it maintains it individually but also collectively. This earth energy is known in the Kemetic culture, in the Kemetic language, as Bayuwali. Bayuwali is generated from the core of the earth, and it gives form and energy to everything that's on the earth. Bayuwali is the energy lines that passes through every expression of earth, including human being. So when you're cut off from it, it's like just turning off a light in a room. Depending on the type of light, it may go out very suddenly or it may fade out over time. And the more you move away from the harmony with the earth, the more the energetic platform of your life is cut. So death, even as we know it, is really controlled by that energy of the earth. And the Bayuwali readings that we give you information on is coming from priests who read the earth's energy for those who were born in that time period, so that individuals can know how to be in alignment with that dialogue, how to be in alignment with the earth's energy. And so when we have our podcast, we try to give you guys a snippet, a bit of that. But if you really want to learn more about the Bayuwali, or get a reading for yourself, I would say absolutely check out Ancasta Natural Healing. Go to our Ancasta website, which is www.an, like natural, H for health, Ancasta Natural Health, anhlife.org. And you can either get a reading for yourself or get a health consultation, so that you can start doing things so that you can live more harmoniously with the natural flows of your life and with the earth. But also, if you want to check out the Bayuwali readings and learn more about that, you can go to risingfirefly.org, and it's just very simple. In the menu in the upper left-hand corner, click on it and you see horoscope, and that's where you can get more detail. Shemzheru, do you have anything you want to add to that? No, it's a lot.
Nah, I don't have anything. I don't have anything. I appreciate you giving me the floor.
Oh, no problem. You know, you're my brother from another mother.
Shout out to that.
Okay.
Gang, gang.
So y'all, this was a dense, a lot of stuff, a lot of information. Again, if you have any questions from any one of our episodes, but especially this one, feel free to reach out to us at our email, which is www.thestarlightpodcast@theearthcenter.org. And stay tuned for us in our next episode, which will be coming out soon, which will we continue the Indigenous Renaissance Initiative, where we'll be talking about water.
You creepy man.
And the importance of water, but the importance of preserving that in Indigenous culture. That's all we got for them today, right, Shemzheru?
Yeah, that's all we got for y'all today. Tune in to the next episode on
water. All right, y'all. With that being said, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you in our next episode.
Absolutely.
Iriharu.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Starlight Podcast. To learn more about Bayouali Earth Energy readings, go to www.risingfirefly.org. To book a spiritual reading or a health consultation, go to www.anhlife.org. And if you're interested in learning more about Kemetic culture, visit our website at www.theearthcenter.org. Don't forget to like, share, and follow us on all social media platforms at Kebtah and on Facebook, The Earth Center. May you shine as bright as the starlight in the night. Iriharu. Peace.
Peace.